So continuing with where we were from our last section, which was the aspiration-based plan and the strategic planning section, I'd like to get into another part of that, which is called the change plan, or you could also talk about it as a project plan. Basically, how to move forward with your strategies. And in this case, I'm basing much of what I'm going to describe based on the work that we've covered previously in the change management section, where I reviewed the dance of change and materials that were put out by Peter Senge. So why don't I go through that? Let's start with, so you'll see here columns that are laid out. There's the step or the outcome required. There's the level of sponsorship required. There's who needs to be involved at certain parts of the plan. There's time frames, and then there's the project challenge. Now, in this case, this is an initial conversation that was set up to create a plan. So this is a basic initiation idea. And when I'm looking over here at the right-hand column where it says project challenge, I'm identifying the part of the dance of change process that it's related to. So let's go from there. So as you can see, this particular initiative was a nationwide or a division-wide project where we were trying to align a consumer excellence initiative across multiple divisions. So OTC was the name of the leadership group, the division that I was a part of. And in this particular case, the outcome was commitment to a company-wide approach to building consumer excellence to meet a global agenda. The sponsorship required in this case would have been the head of the division. Then the involvement required to set this meeting up would have been that person and maybe his assigned executive. And you can see what I put here is that's related to the concept of devoting time towards a change project. And that's sort of how you go through, each section. If you remember in the dance of change, it was sort of a how-to put together a change process. So the questions that we went over in that section clearly laid out, what you should be thinking about in a change initiative. So here, so under time, another one was identify current transformational efforts within the company as a way to integrate initiatives, which is right out of the dance of change. Then we moved to help. It was related to basically defining a champion who would marshal the process through, and the creation of a cross-functional team for the purpose of leading the development and of the strategy and the plan. So whether it be, and this could be an example of who the team, beyond the team. It could be the executive champion, functional representatives, somebody from technology, finance, HR, etc. Then you would move to the section of relevance. So orient the project team led by the executive champion. That shows the buy-in up front, the walk the talk, if you will. That is where we would start to develop the project plan, build the required strategic awareness for critical leaders, inventory of all current initiatives and activities, the grounding of current commitments, the financial commitments, etc., benchmarking across the division in case there were any internal approaches that we needed to be aware of, and then, of course, research from external and competitive sources. Also related to relevance, creation of a recommendation for leadership approval. So what were the principles that we're going to follow, the leadership requirements, organizational implications, et cetera, how we're going to measure it and all that. So this is all in setting up a change plan. Moving to walk the talk, a presentation to the OTC team to determine the level of commitment for the recommendation elements. We could also here have an addition of communications champions. That would be clearly a signal of walk the talk. When we move to the fear and anxiety stage, establishment of a plan to develop and implement solution set with aggressive multi-level communication strategy to build organizational awareness. informal addition of advocates, partners, line managers as informal participants in development and implementation, sort of as a test for understanding and commitment for the new approach within the ranks, and then adapt a strategy to include reality learning from the informal team members that we just spoke to. When we get to assessment and measurement, we would look at currency, legacy approach to metrics and governance, and assess all areas of potential conflict and establish a change plan from that point. We would then, moving forward, facilitate sessions within relevant areas of the division and markets to create linkages of people to the change. We would use our values as the foundation, and of course identify network leaders. We would then include new strategy and approach as part of a division-wide goal setting and alignment process, legitimize these network leaders as the carriers of change, and cultivate within that the appreciative inquiry approach. Again, we covered that in a previous section. And then honestly, from that point, you create your approach to continually engage people regarding organizational strategy in terms of continuing to look at your strategy and looking at your purpose and making any necessary adjustments. So I thought that would be useful to see a sample of how you would set up a change plan, your initial thinking that would go into it. Again, the materials that Senge laid out in the Dance of Change were very instructive to get it started. Obviously, once you had this plan in place, the initial plan with the leaders, you would then put in your time frames, and for each item that you were going to tackle, and from there it's fairly straightforward once you figure out who who's your sponsors, and then when you get into the real project plan, who owns what and who's accountable for any final deliverables. So anyway, we use that as our starting point. I hope that was useful for you, and in at least in terms of working through your current assignment. Again, I do encourage you to go back to the lesson on change management if you need to go to the change of the Dance of Change materials. Thanks again.